big hold down bolt in the middle. It's gone. Now it's on the front.
There are two people that do this to Fred. He doesn't come and watch the TV for just anybody. One of them is Larry, Back to the Future radios. He'll come running from any room in the house when Larry's on the YouTube. And the other one is Jim Lindenus. He'll come in and sit and watch Jim all day long. Now, I like to play YouTube while I'm working at the bench. And Fred likes to sit right there when the good ones are on and watch them. It's all right. It's, just kind of like parents these days. It's my form of babysitting. I guess I'll call it kiddie sitting. All right, back to work now. Okie dokie. One of the very first things I like to do when I'm working on a chassis is get this silly power cord out of the way. Even if the power cord is in good shape, I still will get it out of there and I'll put it back later. And I'm going to cut this off of there so I can leave a little remnant of it, and that'll help remind me where it connected. I mean, I'll be able to figure out from the schemo, but sometimes it's good to have that. They should have really used a UL knot here, whoever put this cord in. I don't know. Anybody know why it has to be a UL knot versus this regular old, through the hole knot that this one was? Now that I think of it, I really can't tell you why it should be a UL versus some other kind of knot. Well, check it out, man. Very, very little of the nasty, broken, cracked insulation syndrome. Now, I don't remember trying this motor. I probably, before I disconnected the power, it might have been a good thing to try that motor, but I'm not going to sweat it. I'll pull the motor out and I'll see if it works that way. I think that's a good way to go. So let me go ahead and get this belt off of here, or get the belt off of this small pulley on the motor. It's real easy. Okay, and the motor connects right here. I'm going to put a little tag on there saying that this connects to a terminal spot on the motor, and I'm going to number them on the motor. Okay, that way I don't have to memorize which one is which. One thing I have not done, and I think I'll stop the camera for right now and go do it, is I have not printed a large format schematic for this yet. So I kind of want to get that done. Let me stop the cameras and I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll come back and I'll be armed with better information. Okay guys, I am going to take this motor out of here, mostly so I can clean it and lubricate it, get it out of the way while I work on other stuff. It's not really in the way that bad, but it won't hurt. Here are the two screws. They're just basically 1/4 inch screws with a slotted head too. So either a driver or a screwdriver will get those out. Set that back down carefully. Alright, it's a small screw that just screws into the back side of this little brass bushing here. There's one up here and one down below. Okay, now I'll just turn it sideways so I can go ahead and mark these wires. It actually turns pretty freely, but I'll be testing it here in a few minutes. Okay, I like to put the screws back where they were. I'll do that after. First I want to get these disconnected. That's number one. That's number two. We'll go ahead and put a small piece of tape on each wire as well. If I can, I always try to get the tape on before removing the wire. That way I don't lose track, but sometimes I can't do that. This one looks like I can. Alright, there's number one. And we'll call this one number two. Okay, you know what? This thing's in my way. Let me mark exactly where it sits. And let's get it out of the way. I may not really need to take this whole assembly out of here. And really, if I don't need to, I don't think I will. Again, just like the knobs, this has 2 set screws. Okay, one in one position, and then the second one 90 degrees away from it. But it wants to turn as I go to turn the screw. There we go, there's the first one. You can tell it's getting late, I'm getting clumsy. There we go. Just enough to get out of the way. Be careful of that band switch when you're sliding it forward. Okay, now I can get to this number 2 wire much more easily. Now that wire, these wires are already short enough. I don't need to be clipping them, so I'm going to remove the solder from each of those terminals. Now there will be 2 more wires. One goes to the band switch right here. The other one goes over here to the power. Alright, let's go ahead and get that out of there. There's number 1. Number 2 is right there. Nothing to it. Just get the solder hot first. Yeah, hey, it doesn't take so long when I put the desoldering braid on it. And just soak that solder out of there. Okay, now like I said, there are 2 more wires that connect this motor to this chassis. Alright, so I've got these 2 black wires labeled. The 2 black wires, 1 and 2, go to these 2 terminals here. Now on the back side of the motor you've got yellow and a black. The black one goes all the way over here to the power. I'll put a number 3 right there just for grins. Okay, and then I'll put a number 3 on that wire. And if I really get lost, well, I'll have this video to look back at later. Okay, 3. Okay, so I'll disconnect that there. And then finally, number 4, the yellow one, is going to go right here on the band switch. The best way I can figure that is to put an arrow right here with the number 4. Okay, number 4. Yikes. Getting clumsy. It's going to be time to hit the sack soon. I used to be able to take a long weekend like this weekend and stay up all hours, get about 4 hours sleep, do the same thing, and do it every night of the weekend. Well, hell, I can't even pull it off one night now. It's getting old, man. This getting old thing. It's not that, you know, it's not always fun, but it does beat the alternative. Ooh, I left my soldering iron on. That was dumb. Okay, well, we don't want to do that, do we? I am one of those. I turn the soldering iron off between every time I use it. When I'm finished, I turn it off. I never leave it sit and run idle. I think that's bad for the tips. I don't ever hear it talked about, though. Your tips should last you a good long time if you tin them properly and you don't let them sit there and cook. Keep them clean. There we go. Number 4. Let's get number 3 out of here. Alright, we'll fix that later. Alright, so what we have now is we can go ahead and pull this motor out, and pull these wires out carefully, and I have a motor. Now I'll look later at the schemo to find out exactly which wires do what. I think I know, but I don't want to say until I check for sure. We'll set this aside, okay? Now that clears up a little space in here. Makes it easier to get to the things I need to get to. Now my mom used to say, it doesn't take much to amuse a small mind. Now you watch Freddie here for the next minute or so, and you tell me if what she said was true. You know what I think about Fred. He's sweet as anything, but he's not the brightest bulb in the chandelier. So let's just take a look at him and see if my mom was right.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. I have nothing to lose right now. And at the same time, Brenda's got me, rechecking our little add subtract relay setup. He doesn't think that these solenoids are going in as far as they should. He's kind of right. It is kind of floppy. This one up here is they're both kind of floppy, actually. I don't know if it's supposed to be that loose or not, but you can see that it kind of flop around a little. I don't know. I may have to look at that also. So it's just a couple of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, rather than go through all the soldering and all that crap and everything, temporarily I'm just going to loosen the screw right here. And the article recommended that you use 20 gauge wire, 18 to 20 or something like that. I don't know. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take reads and it says you don't want to have to do that. All right, I'm a believer already, all right? So what we're going to do is go ahead and wrap a wire around it. It'll be thin enough that I don't have to remove the screw too far. Tighten it up tight. Ground it to this, and we're going to give this whole thing another shot. So let me get that wire connected. Since this is only a test situation, I've decided to go ahead and just use solid wire. It'll be a whole lot easier to bend and install. I don't have to worry about overly tinning it and everything. Anyway, then the screw I've loosened up, and I'm taking some good alcohol here, literally 91%. A very good screw. Now these are the two. Let me get my pencil here if I can.
I was going to go print that schematic earlier when I shut the camera off, and then I got pulled into a movie with my wife, and honestly, I'm glad I did. It was a great movie. The movie is one called The Reader. If you've never seen it, you ought to see it. It stars Kate Winslet, who, by the way, has turned out to be one of the best actresses these days. I just think that lady is awesome. It's set in Germany just after World War II. Actually, it starts about 1958 and goes up to the late 90s. And it's a really tough story to think about. There's a lot going on, and your knee-jerk reaction winds up not being what you feel at the end of the movie. So you need to watch it. I don't want to give away too many details. But it is set in Germany after the war, so you can kind of guess what some of the content is going to be about. Now I want to get that, well, I'm not going to do it right now. I do want to get the tuning condenser off of there, but right now it's providing a really convenient stand, and it's holding this thing at just the right angle. So I'm going to leave it be. Now I am finally going to go print that schematic, and I'll be back to work on this radio probably in the morning. It's about 12:30 right now on Monday night, and I have to do some things with wifey tomorrow. Before I hit the sack for the night, let me point something out here. Usually on these Zenith chassis, the model number of the radio is not printed. This thing is in a large tombstone cabinet, however, and that cabinet might not have been stamped the way that the console units are stamped. But in any event, the model number is printed right here, model 9s262. That tells me it's a 9-tube radio, and the 2, I believe, means it was made in 38, I believe. Yeah, 38, because 463 is a 1940. That's always what my sort of benchmark is, the 463. So 9s262, 9-tube radio, and before the wave magnet. I think the wave magnet came out the year after this was made. All right, it really is time to get to bed now. If you look at this circuit diagram right here, all right, you see the motor. It's an AC motor. One side of the winding here takes juice right off the 120 volt okay? And the other side comes off this switch. And I am not sure, but I think that depending on what the phase difference is between this and this, or this and this, determines which direction that motor will turn. If somebody out there knows exactly how this works, hey, put it down there in the comments. That would really help us all. But anyway, I'm sure that I know it's a relationship between this right here and this right here that determines which direction this motor goes. Okay, so, but look at all this wiring. If I try to test this motor on the bench, I'm going to have to hook up at least 4 or 5 gator wires. I'm going to be horsing around with switching, the polarity, quote unquote, polarity of them to test the directions. And that sounds like an awful lot of work. And me being kind of lazy tonight, I really don't want to do that work. What I'd rather do is put this motor back in the radio. It's only 2 screws. Hook up 4 wires, right? Solder the 4 wires in. Test the motor. And if it tests out good, well, I don't have to worry about it. It's already mounted. So I think that's a good plan. We're going to go ahead and mount that motor up right there. You see that? There are the 2 screw holes right here. It is adjustable so you can set tension on the belt. There are 2 terminals right here that get hooked to wires that get hooked up to the motor on one side. The motor itself has some wires that hook up in a different place, and that'll be all I have to do. So I say we do it. Guys, I'd like to take a second to explain something to you. My videos have been coming out pretty slow lately, and I just have some things going on at home that have slowed me down. And so if you'll bear with me, it won't take too long, a few months I suppose, unfortunately, and I'll be able to pick things up again. At some point I'll definitely need to be making videos to keep my mind sane. So just stick with me if you would. And normally I'm pretty much of a workaholic, and I imagine at some point in the not too distant future that I'll be a workaholic again. All right, boys and girls, let's start digging into this Zenith now. It's the next morning and I've gotten some sleep. Boy, this is so open compared to most Zeniths that I work on that this is going to be a joy. I am going to have to worry about this guy though, right here. And it's obviously a transformer. And I've never seen Zenith mount one like this before. There's my trouble. See, I'm going to have to close the door just to keep him out of here. Marty, you don't belong there. Come on, Marty, time to get down, buddy. Okay, you're starting to tear things up. Come on, let's go. Come on, down you go. Okay, out you go, buddy. Out you go. See you later. All right, looking at the parts list, or the description table here, parts description. On the schemo, you see that C19, C20, and C21 are all electrolytics, as well as C18. So C18 is a 12, 19 is a 2, 20 is a 6, and 21 is an 8. So there we go. C19, or C18, 19, 20, and 21. So I'll mark these on the schematic, and I'll also mark them on the old capacitors in the chassis, or right next to them on the chassis wall or something, so that they're easy to identify when I get to that point. And what you see right here is something that all of the Zeniths of this period used a lot. They all used one, and that's a can-dome resistor. Basically, it's a voltage divider resistor. So it's a long wire-wound resistor that has several taps on it, and you can pull different voltages off of this resistor based on how far into the resistor that tap is. The trouble with these is they weren't sealed, and they tend to fail. Occasionally I'll find one in really good shape, and if I tap on it and wiggle it and stuff like that and I don't see any changes, then I'm okay. But if there's anything suspicious at all about them, I abandon it in place and I put in separate resistors on a terminal strip to take its place. So we'll see what we come up against. This electrolytic here has been replaced, and this is a 12 microfarad 450 volt. The other electrolytics will be in a can, I'm sure. C18 right here connects to one end of that can-dome voltage divider resistor. So let's take a look in there. Alright, it's not the end there, that's for sure. But it connects to this end over here. And that end comes down here and goes straight into an electrolytic. This electrolytic can right here is not labeled with what's in there, and so I'll have to figure that out. There is one right here that is labeled 16. I'm not sure where the 16 microfarad is, 400 volts, so I'll be able to find that. It gives a part number. This is an original Zenith can, so it gives a part number. It should be easy to find. Alright, back in place now. Because it looks to me, the reason I'm stalling here is I'm looking at the electrolytic can right here. This is the bottom of the can. And this isn't like a lot of cans where it's real well marked. Okay, you can kind of see the bottom waxy, the waxy bottom of the thing right in here. It gets a little tough to see because the light's poor for you, but I'll do the best I can. Anyway, one of those electrolytics in the can goes off here to this point on the can dome. And that's the positive side of this one right here connects to that same point. So I have to figure out where that is on the schemo. One way to do that is to start to take measurements of the resistances in this can dome, and perhaps I can be able to identify which end is which. A lot of times you can tell by looking at it because they'll be sort of schematically represented on the drawing, but in this case they're really not. This can dome does not have any connections to ground. Well, the center tap is connected to ground, and that's it. So, okay, there we go. That's a good idea. So if I connect this one side of my meter to ground, all right, this will be ground right here. See how that's, do you see how this is soldered right here to the body of the can dome? That will be ground. And if you look at my fluke meter right now, you'll see that that is definitely ground. All right, so now let's touch this one, the one right next to it. That's showing 0.3. That doesn't make any sense. If that's ground, resistance to that one showing 0.3. I may have to disconnect everything in order to test these. I get 53.7 to that one. Yeah. You know what? I'm going to have to disconnect these to make this work because there's things in parallel, the resistors and stuff like that. I think the best approach for me is just to start to replace these components. I'll pluck these out of here and start to take measurements after I've plucked them out of there, because I really think I'm not going to get good measurements with everything connected. And I've got another dead battery on the Sony camera. Alright, I'll go change that and I'll be right back. Alright, got the battery replaced in the Sony. Okay guys, I hope you'll forgive me for what's going to seem like a bit of rambling to you. But truth is, one of my camera batteries died, as you know. And I kind of wandered around here trying to figure out what was going on with this can dome before I finally started plucking things out. I know I said I was going to pluck those things out, but I was still curious about the measurements. So they won't mean much to you because I talked about it earlier, but you know, you might watch it to see my mistakes like that one. And you know, just get through it. We'll be done with it in a second. Let's see what we get here. I'm measuring 53.8 from ground to that second one down in the schemo. Okay, so from ground right here to that point right there, I'm measuring 53.8. So that's like, this is, you know, that's this right here. But you see this one right here that I was measuring basically 0, it may be going to ground some way through this switch here. So what I can do, okay, I'm going to have to test. I'm having trouble getting good readings off of this can dome to compare to the schematic. Most notably, this between the ground here and this first tap on this side here, it's supposed to read 85 ohms. And I'm not getting 85 ohms, I'm getting 0. And I just want to, I don't think it's because of the other things that are attached, but I need to be sure, because if that is 0, then this thing is no good. So let me go ahead and start to remove some of the connections to that point. I better get some solder braid ordered up, because this is the last of what I have. And radios made in this during this era, time this radio was made in the late 1930s, they tended to put big globs of solder on everything. So I don't need to remove anything from the ground here, but I'm gonna let me remove the solder from this guy right here. You want to try not to get these can domes too hot. If they are good, you might. I always thought you could do damage to the winding in the thing. So I don't like to run this thing too long on there. Go ahead and disconnect this one too, or get it ready to. Now, I have to be careful when I do more than one like this, because I don't want to lose track of where I was. So before I go too far, I'm going to go ahead and label a couple of these. Wow, that solder does not want to melt. Doesn't matter how hot I get it. You'll find that sometimes with the old radios. The solder does not like to melt. Don't know why. I don't know if it was just cheap solder or what the deal was. Okay, you know what? Before I do much else, let me go ahead and number these. Okay. I'm just going to be real simple about it. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Okay, I'm not going to number the ground. Number 4 and number 5. Let's put some labels on a couple of them to get started. There's only one wire attached to this number 3 point. This black one right here. So let's go ahead and pull that wire out, and we'll stick a label on it. Well, after thinking about it, I decided that, you know, I'm using numbers in other places in the work on this radio, and so maybe I'll use something different. And so I'm going to relabel these with letters instead, and that'll help me keep it all straight later. Let's call this one wire C. And it doesn't hurt if I put can dome on that label. Well, that's good enough. Okay, we'll tuck that out of there. We're going to call that wire C. Let me change that label on the can dome itself. This is good to get this cleaned off a little bit anyway. Alright, this is A, B, C, D, and E. Alright, so we got this one off of there. Now, I should be able to measure this pretty well now. And so it should be 85 ohms. Let's see what we have. I got a feeling this can dome is going to be getting replaced. And here I was just a little while ago saying that maybe can domes aren't so terrible. Alright, let's hook this up. Ah, I'll be darned. 89.6 ohms. Well, hell, that's great. I would not have guessed it. Let me try. While that is disconnected though, let me check the other resistors. Okay, so it's totally legit to check this, to leave these connected and to test this way across these two, because there's no other path from that terminal there. So that's the only path that can take. I'm getting 53.8. It is supposed to be 50. Okay, so well, I'll be darned. I don't know what the heck, man. What was going on before? Let me write that down. 53.8. Okay, and this was 89.6. All right, now let's measure from point C to point A, and that'll tell us whether A to B is good. So I'm getting 305 ohms, 305.1 ohms, 0.2 ohms, well, whatever. So do a little math here. 305.1, enter. 53.8 minus 89.6 minus 89.6, oops, 0.6 minus 161.7. That's supposed to be 250. Okay, I'm getting 161. Why does it say 250 on this schemo? I wonder if... That's very curious. Well, oh, wait a minute. I'm forgetting about this part here. So, if I'm going to measure, I'm going to measure all the way across the ground. Now, 394.1. All right, that's my mistake. 394.1, enter. 53.8 minus 89.6 minus 250.7. I'm supposed to have 250. Man, it doesn't get any better than that. So right here, this candle ohm is good. I would not have thought that would be the case. Okay, so far so good. Alright guys, I'll do the rest of these candle measurements offline because I think this is running a very great risk of being pretty boring. So we'll get back to getting on with other things as soon as I get that done. So, for all practical purposes, this candle is within throwing distance of the spec on it. Okay, so I think we can call this baby good. And what that means is, I don't know why they wired this incorrectly. The whole reason that got me going on this, let me show you why. The reason I'm doing this whole thing with this candle is because the way this radio is wired does not match what the schematic says is correct. Now you look at that point A on that candle resistor, right there at the bottom of that string of resistors, okay? It's connected to the negative side of C18. All right, you look right here. There's C18. This is the negative side. Of course it's negative because it's going to the center tap of the secondary on the main power transformer, which is like the most negative part of the radio. So that's negative, that's positive up there. The negative is going off to point A on the candle. Look here, the negative, trust me, this is the negative. See, there's positive right there. This is the negative, and it's going to point B on the candle in the circuit. Does that matter? I don't know. I think it probably does. Okay, now let's look at the other end of that capacitor, the positive end. They have it going to point E, the very end of the candle. The positive end of the capacitor in the schemo goes right here to this point between the field coil and this 15K resistor. Now, does it matter? Where they have it connected in reality is right here. Does that really matter? I don't know. It might. I think it might. I think a pi circuit has to be shaped like a pie for a reason, or like the letter pi for like the letter pi for a reason. So a pi circuit is formed right here. Okay, you've got this capacitor, this inductance, and then this capacitor right here. Then you have other stuff too, voltage divider and all that. But this is connected over here when it should be connected there. So I think this is wired incorrectly. They've got the right value of capacitor in there for C18. They've got a 12 microfarad, but it definitely is not a Zenith. Okay, so this doesn't really belong here. It's a Mallory, and it does say 12 microfarad at 450 volts, but it is in the wrong place. Now maybe it had some hum, and they found that hooking it up this way got rid of more hum than any other way, but that's probably because they didn't repair other stuff that needed to be repaired. So that's going to be how I start, is I'm going to put the right I'm going to put the capacitor to the right terminals here and straighten out that can dome. Well, guys, Buzz once told me, Buzz 1151 that is, that your videos really ought to be 30 minutes or less. And if you've been watching the clock like I have, you'll see that I'm a little over that 30-minute time limit, so it is time to wrap it up. So we're going to close this down. Give me a little time before the next one. I've already done all the shooting on it. It takes me a lot of time to edit right now. But it is coming. I actually have finished this radio, so all the rest of them are coming. You just have to give me a little more time. All right, so from your Western Outpost in Salt Lake City, this is Michael, and that's all for now.
Here, and one goes somewhere else. One goes where this wire goes down here. So pretty simple. All the same size capacitor. I can't make any mistakes here. Huh. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna do my best to see if I can make a mistake while I'm doing this. And just noticing why this capacitor isn't exactly the same. Must be insufficient coffee. It looks like that is slightly different. Slightly smaller. 10-400. 10-400. I don't know. Okay, that's good though. That's my plan.